Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andre and I'm your bookworm, and today we do not have a review, but don't worry, there will be more coming soon. Today we have a February wrap-up and March TBR. So February has ended, as you've probably noticed by now, and we are here to talk about the books I finished, the books that I'm planning to read, the books I am currently reading, just a lot of book talk. And February was a bit contradictory to me because I don't know if you saw January wrap up, but I read very little because I was so busy with work. But February, which is the shortest month of the year, was actually a very good month for me. I've caught up in all my reading challenges and I'm actually ahead on those challenges. So I'm feeling good about it, and I hope that March doesn't jinx it and puts me back again, so let's hope so. But so for context, I was able to finish in February. I finished 5 books and 5 manga volumes. Might not seem that much, but all the books I finished were quite chunky, so the total of pages that I was able to achieve was 4,500. And the scores I gave were not bad at all. I mean, the lowest score I gave was 4.2 and the maximum was 5, so all very good reads in this month, which I'm very happy about. Now, let's stop praising myself and let's focus on the actual books that I am reading, read, will read, all of those. We'll start with the books that I'm currently reading, and let's start with my Kindle read, which is Lord of the Mysteries, which, after some great discussion from some of the fans of this web novel, I came to realize that I'm actually not even halfway through the first volume. For some reason, the files that I was reading from they consider the volume slightly different from what it actually is. And so once I finished the first volume, which were the first 100 chapters, I thought I was done with it, but actually the first volume ends on chapter 230, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm still reading the first volume, per se, even though my file says volume 2. And yeah, there's not much I can say. It's still good. I'm still feeling very excited when reading this. It's super fun, super light. It's one of those reads where I'm tired, I'm ready to go to bed, and I pick it up, and I'm always happy to read it because it goes so fast and the story is quite engaging. But the other thing I want to say is once I finish the actual volume 1 of this web novel, I will do a proper review of it. So for now, just have a mini review of the first half, or not even half, of the first volume. The other book I am currently reading is Parable of the Talents by Octavia Butler. For the ones that watched the previous wrap-up, you know that this was the last book that I had planned to read in February, so I achieved all the goals that I wanted, and that is good. I'm probably 75–80% through this book, so I'm very close to the end. And for the ones that don't know, this is actually the second book of a planned trilogy that unfortunately was never finished because Octavia Butler passed away. But the first one I read, it was amazing. I have a review here on the channel. I definitely recommend it. However, it is very heavy. And the second book doesn't shy away from it. It's also super heavy. It deals with so many very heavy, very hard content. So just take that into account if you decide to read these books, especially because they are so relevant to the days that we are going through. So yeah, nonetheless, I think it's a masterpiece. It's a piece of art in itself, and it definitely makes you reflect on a lot of things. And my last current read is A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. And by this, you realize that yes, I was not only able to finish A Game of Thrones, which I was reading in the past month, but I was also able to finish A Clash of Kings, which is the second book of A Song of Ice and Fire trilogy. A Song of Ice and Fire trilogy. Jesus, I had a mini stroke back then. My buddy read progressed at the speed of light, and at the rhythm we're going, I'll probably finish this in maybe the 4th book by March, or by the end of March, so let's hope so. These books are amazing. I don't need to talk much about it. Everyone knows what A Song of Ice and Fire is. I can say that the reread is just as good. It has moments that are flabbergasting, that really make you feel what the characters are feeling, the betrayals, the conquests, everything really. So it's a good reread, definitely recommend it. It's just unfortunate that it's not finished, and in my opinion will never be, but that's a whole different subject. I'm currently getting the reviews for the first 2 books ready so that they are published within March, but let's hope I may be able to do that because March will be chaotic. Now, with the current reads out of the way, let's focus on the books that I actually finished in February, starting with Northern Wrath by Thilde Cold Holt. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. This is an epic fantasy series. It's a trilogy, the first of the trilogy. I don't know if you can see well the cover. It's really nice. It has Nordic mythology inspired. Think Vikings, think John Gwynne, but in a more realistic world in the sense that it's set or kind of set in our world, but with a lot of fantasy still. And like I said, this is the first of the trilogy. The trilogy is called the Hanged God Trilogy, and this was also the author's debut work. And I have to say, I was very impressed with the quality of it. Initially, I wasn't very sure if I was going to enjoy this book because it felt very historical fiction, and I'm not really very keen on that subgenre. But then as we progressed, it just kept getting better, and it shifted the way it was portraying things, and I really enjoyed that. And the character work was really, really good as well. And by the time I finished this book, I was ready to grab the second one. The review for this book should come out this month, but the thing I can say is, think God of War, Ragnarok, but book form. And what I found surprising is that the score on Goodreads for this book is only a 3.91 out of 5. And the score I gave was a 4.6 out of 5. So I think this book deserves a lot more and a lot better score than what Goodreads has, but at the same time, it doesn't have that many ratings. But we'll get to that in the proper review of it. For now, just know that I gave a good score. The book I finished after that was A Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin. I probably don't need to say this, but this is the first one of the series called A Song of Ice and Fire. There are 5 books published. Supposedly, there are going to be 7. The 6th and the 7th haven't been released yet. Everyone's waiting, but nonetheless, this is an impressive work of art. This is a really good fantasy book in general and the series overall. From plot, characters, world building, writing style, everything is done to perfection. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. On Goodreads, this book has a score of 4.44 out of 5. And the score I gave for this first one was a 5. I truly enjoyed it. Even on a reread, I think everything is just set in such a way that you can see everything coming, how inevitable it is, but how exciting it is as well to see it happening. The book I finished after that was A Clash of Kings, which is the second book of the series. So it was really fast, the reading of this one, because it's really exciting. So many things happen and it all happens so fast. There's not really a slow moment. Everything just keeps going and going. There are characters that maybe are a bit slower, but still, it's all very engaging and your enjoyment is really, really high when reading this. Although I'm saying that it's amazing, but I do think this one isn't as good as A Game of Thrones. There are some things that are definitely better, but others that are just a bit worse. Still amazing quality, especially character development and world building expansion, really good. On Goodreads, this book has a score of 4.42 out of 5, so very, very close to the first one. And my score was a 4.6 out of 5. Still very good, still above the Goodreads score, so take that into account. I still enjoyed this book a lot. And after all that Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire reading, I finished a read that was probably one of the most spontaneous reads that's going to happen this year, and that was The Rise of Kyoshi by F.C. Yee. This is a fantasy world. For the ones that don't know, this is within the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated series. It is set many years before the events of that series. It's set during the time of Avatar Kyoshi. And this was a very surprising read because I thought I was going for a YA book, but it was a lot more adult than I thought, and there were very, very serious themes discussed in this book. But at the same time, it kept that Avatar youthfulness into it, if there's any way to describe it. And I think it blended things quite well. And a lot of people think the same because this book on Goodreads has a score of 4.44 out of 5. Same score as A Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin. And my score was a 4.6 out of 5. Again, maybe not as good as Game of Thrones, but still good score, still above the Goodreads average. So I think this book definitely deserves the score it has. And the last book I finished in February was Wrath by John Gwynne. This is the fourth and final book of the Faithful and the Fallen series. This is also an epic fantasy book with a lot of Nordic mythology inspiration. However, this book was a bit of a mix for me. I was expecting quite a lot for the ending of this series, And whilst there were parts that fulfilled my expectations, I think other parts disappointed me quite a bit. I still think that it's quite an epic book, and if you like battles and action, there are scenes here that are definitely very well written and will fulfill all your expectations. And on Goodreads, this book has an amazing score. It has a score of 4.52 out of 5. So far, the best one here of the books that I've spoken about. But my score was actually the lowest this month. It was the 4.2 out of 5. Again, it's not a bad score. I was just expecting something different, something more fulfilling in certain aspects of this book. I was expecting a 4.6, 4.8, but unfortunately that wasn't it. So nothing wrong with the book, just not aligned with me. And then the 5 manga volumes that I finished were all the One Piece volumes from 56 to 60, which is pretty much Impel Down and all of the Marineford arcs, which were just amazing. So many good moments. I was holding back tears all the time in all the volumes because they were all so good. And the thing is, I also realized how different in length these arcs are between the manga and the anime. In the anime, they really extend it, which, I mean, I love those arcs. They are still very epic. I like that there's more detail between the battle between people. But with this, there was always so many things happening so fast, it never really let you breathe, which I enjoyed, and I thought that elevated the stakes and it elevated the suspense. It was really, really good. And that ending, of course, we all know how it ends, how sad it is, but I think it was all done really, really well. And what about scores? Well, on Goodreads, these volumes have respectively 4.66, 4.69, 4.70, 4.74, and 4.63. All scores that are really, really high. Okay, that these are mangas, so they are judged a bit differently, but still, these scores are super close to 5. And the scores I gave were 4.6, 4.8, 5, 4.8, and 4.6. So they kind of form like a pyramid. I think the middle one is really, really good. It's perfect. The other ones, the 4.8s, are very close to a 5 too. So they're not shy from greatness. And those were all the books that I finished in February. Now, what am I planning to read in March? Well, for Lord of the Mysteries, I'm guessing I'm still going to be reading the first volume. If I am able to finish volume 1, maybe I'll jump to volume 2, but that is yet to be decided because I still have 100 chapters ahead. Who knows, maybe I'll be tired by then. We shall see. Same thing for A Storm of Swords. Depends all on my buddy reads. Hopefully we're able to finish in March. If so, I shall be going into the 4th volume of Feast for Crows, and otherwise I'll just still be reading that. But what about after Parable of the Talents? What will I read? Well, the one that I'm going to read right after is a world that we've explored before. It has been quite a while, and so I decided to jump into the Shadows of the Apt again with Salute the Dark by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is an epic fantasy series with a very, very interesting world building. It's the 4th of the series. I think the series has 10 books. The first and second books I thought were really good. They were improving in quality, and then the third one kind of crashed quite a bit. So I'm hesitant about this 4th book. Hopefully it will be better than the 3rd one. Hopefully it will jump the scores back up again. But again, hesitant. So not increasing my expectations by a lot, just keeping them on the medium. Once I finish this book, I'm going to start a new series, which is also a fantasy series. There's a lot of fantasy. And this one, the series is called Dandelion Dynasty, written by Ken Liu. You've probably heard about it a lot. The first book is called The Grace of Kings. I've heard good things about this series in terms of quality overall. I don't know much about the plot, and I'm trying to stay away from knowing more about the plot because I want to be surprised with it. I just know that it's Asian inspired and very epic at moments. So I cannot wait, very curious to read it. And then, because I was saying that we're having a lot of fantasy, I'm gonna jump a bit into science fiction, and I'm gonna read Blackout by Connie Willis. This is the same author as the Doomsday Book, a great book about time traveling, and also the book To Say Nothing of the Dog, which belongs to the same series. And this one is also the 3rd one of the same series, which is called Oxford Time Travelers or Oxford Time Travels. I think the first one was really good. The second one, not so much. So let's see what the 3rd one brings. Also, because this one is the first book of another series called All Clear. which is only composed by 2 books, so it's a duology. But I hope it brings the same intensity as the Doomsday Book, but we shall see. After this sci-fi book, I shall go into some more Nordic deliciousness and read Shackled Fates by Thilde Coldholt, which is the second book of the trilogy that I mentioned before, where the first one was called Northern Wrath. I told you, I really enjoyed it, so I decided to pick this one up right after. I'm very keen to know if it maintains the same quality, if it'll keep the same feeling, so very excited to read it. And if I still have time, which I'm not sure, I will jump again into the Discworld with a bit more of Terry Pratchett, and I'm gonna read Pyramids. From what I know, this is the first book of the Ancient Civilizations series, and I'm very curious to know what it will be about, but I'm sure I'm gonna be in for a lot of laughters and a lot of witty remarks of Terry Pratchett. And in regard to mangas, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to read anything, but if I do, I'll still be going at One Piece and entering the New World arc, which, again, epic. I really love to see the crew getting back together, so that'll be fun. But now let me know, what have you read in February that you really loved, or what are you going to read in March that you're really excited about? Comment down below. And if you're new, don't forget, subscribe, like the content, and I'll be seeing you on Thursdays and Sundays, okay? See you soon!